First, maybe you could just provide a brief introduction to yourselves, your companies, your involvement in blockchain. Keep it to 1 or 2 lines top.
Sure. I'm Chen. I'm the CEO of Xunlei Technology. Xunlei is doing some of the groundwork, the infrastructure work for blockchain. We developed a Sounder chain, which broke through the 1 million transaction per second barrier. So that's our primary interest in blockchain technology.
Hi, my name is Alex Yang. I'm CEO of Virtual Economy Era Technology. So we're a Hong Kong-based blockchain infrastructure platform technology firm. So we are trying to build the infrastructure for all the others to build the blockchain at a fingertip. So instead of like a ERC20 token, one click you have a token. We want to make it so easy that with one click you can have your Explorer wallet and the loads, everything ready for your blockchain project. Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Juska, Radian Partners. We do direct investment for large family owners, and the blockchain is one of the areas we help the families to look into. In addition to my business, I'm one of the 20 inaugural council members of the Future of Blockchain Council of World Economic Forum. So I guess my contribution to the space is more intellectual. We haven't invested a lot just because we probably will get into that why. Very happy to be here to talk about this very exciting topic. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's dive in. Jen, let's start with you. Do you believe that the potential for this technology exceeds people's expectations or vice versa?
I think when it comes to new technology, and it happened over and over again in the history, when, with the railways, with the .com, people usually reaction is, binary, right? It's either gonna change the world in every aspect or it's completely just hype. I think the truth is always in the middle, and blockchain is no exception. What happened right now is people thinking about token ICO almost synonymous with blockchain technology itself. But what happened is all this, 5,000 tokens issued, of course, majority of them are scam or, just completely built on, there's no underlying business, no underlying technology. However, for blockchain technology itself, it's not a compared to AI, it's not a general purpose technology. The application compared to AI is much more narrow. But with the right application, I actually think blockchain is going to change, completely transform quite a few industries. And that transform is going to be quite profound. So I think it's very important we take a very healthy, balanced view on this technology.
All right, so you're somewhere in the middle, it seems. Alex, where do you fall?
Well, back to your earlier comments about hype and hip and hype. I think it's a hip in technology, but hype in pricing. I think blockchain as a whole is overrated because driven by the crazy price increase last year or earlier this year. However, the implementation of blockchain itself, it's just at its beginning. It's really going to rely on the infrastructure level of the technology involved, how it's going to integrate with the traditional business, especially like finance, P2P technology. All this will have a new era that will enable us to have like what the internet have done to the world. So blockchain going to bring us to that stage. Yeah.
You mentioned these wild price increases, and we saw a year ago, the price was going insane. Bitcoin was reaching nearly $20,000 per coin. But over the past year, these prices have hit the floor. I mean, they have been totally hammered.
Yeah.
Are we witnessing the last gasps of a bubble right now?
I think it was a bubble, but not really just in the blockchain world. You can see the other technology shares, they also has a crash. It's actually due to the whole liquidity or shrink of the liquidity of the financial industry. So that's one way. But of course, as Jim mentioned, the ICO scam would help to drive the price further down. But in the long-term price, it's just a reflection of what people's perspective on this industry. So in the long term, I'm very confident of the price will come the way back. Yeah.
Lei, let's get your view on this.
Yeah, I think Sam Gelman is at least partially right in the sense that blockchain, to have long-lasting value, it must extend its user base beyond just speculators. We saw in the 90s, the internet explosion was driven by consumer-oriented large-scale applications. I think for blockchain to stay, it needs the same thing. In that sense, speculation is actually hurting the industry because it pushes the regulators to come up with tougher regulations throughout the world, making such application harder to develop. But there is also exceptions to the rule. For example, Xunlei developed an application that we leverage users' redundant computing resources, hard drives, and network capacity, et cetera, to build a large-scale edge computing network. Currently, there are more than 1 million nodes participating in this network, and many renowned internet companies in China are using this technology, using this network to do their business. This is blockchain in this application is used both as a record-keeping application, but also a reward system. I think this is a fairly large blockchain application in today's standard, but blockchain application have the potential to reach over 1 billion users. When that happens, I think 30 billion market cap would seem minuscule.
Really?
Yeah.
What is your price target then?
Well, I'm not saying this is easy. For this to happen, 3 things must occur first. I would summarize the 3 things in 3 numbers: 1 million, 1, and 10 million. First, I believe there must be a blockchain architecture that can sustain 1 million transactions per second and have a response time within seconds. That's the foundation of such application. So we developed Thunder Chain. It currently can do that. And it also gets around of the issue of divergence so that all transactions, when it's committed, it will eventually happen. So secondly, I think there needs to be one somewhat unified, well-thought regulation framework that is developed proactively, not reactively, to allow both innovation and protect the consumers. Third, I think we need to have an application break through the 10 million users barrier. If there is a 10 million users application of blockchain today, we will be seeing the entire technology in a completely different light.
I'm really intrigued by this project you mentioned, where you sort of rent out your unused computing space. It sounds a little bit like an Airbnb for computers.
Yes.
And Jen, we were actually talking a little bit about a project you're advising, and it sounds sort of similar in terms of the business model here.
Actually,
maybe you can tell us about that.
Sure. This is the first time Leia and I met in person. We actually compared notes on phone earlier this year because the project I'm advising have very similar approach to Thunder Chain. So basically, if you watch, anyone's a Star Wars fan or Blade Runner or all these movies, Do we
have Star Wars, Blade Runner fans out in the audience?
Anyone watch
sci-fi movies?
They're both.
All right.
3. So in those movies, there are some really cutting edge special effect. Using, for example, in Rogue One, when Princess Leia and General Tarkin, the actor already passed away, but the image came out, interacted with other actors. That's actually a special effect done by a company called OTOY. OTOY is a very powerful company, in Hollywood. It's advised, on the advisory board, they have Eric Schmeck, Ari Emanuel, etc. So in terms of industrial design, they use so Autodesk is a shareholder. Also, Autodesk use their software for 3D industrial design. And in terms of gaming, Unity use their software as well. Unity has about 7 million game developers. They all use this for AR, VR function. And one challenge for this OTOY company is that whenever they got any projects come in, they need to use enormous amount of GPU. And often the cloud GPU is very expensive and it's just not enough, simply. So 9 years ago, the CEO filed a patent basically just to access distributed GPU. a lot of people in the room, you're looking at a phone right now, and in your phone, in your computer, there's actually a GPU that's not really used. It's sitting on idle. As Lei says, it's blockchain is a very good way to create this kind of micro incentive. So OTOY use blockchain to create their own blockchain and issue this render token and enable individuals while your phone or computer is charging and not using, they will be able to access, their developers will be able to access your GPU, and then you receive this token. And where is the value of this token? Is basically when there's a big, large, movies projects coming to the market, OTOY will ask those companies to pay half US dollar, half render token. So that pushes up the value and therefore improve the incentive for people to lend their computing GPU to the market. So this project also, now we're exploring, I think one of the really big direction we're gonna get is a hologram, right? Larger scale hologram. And so we're now looking at, OTOY is doing a large-scale hologram. They can use this render token to buy the virtual real estate for advertisement. So if you own, I've already put my name down to own Victoria Harbor in Hong Kong. So if someone wants to put a, hologram advertisement, they will have to pay rent to me. So I think it's a very exciting experiment using blockchain.
When you say hologram, are we going to be able to project ourselves like Princess Leia from R2-D2?
It's possible, actually. Yeah, it's possible. If you go to LA, I will make sure they give you a demo.
Please do.
Yeah.
I mean, so this sounds like a pretty obvious business proposition. There are all of these computing resources out there that are untapped. They're not being used. People aren't extracting the full value from them that they can be. And if you can tap into that, sort of like an Uber does or a Didi does, it seems like a pretty compelling.
But this is not new. It's actually happened for a long time. If you play games, right? My younger daughter, she plays game all the time. It's a problem for me as a mother. But if you have your own server playing game, when you're not playing, when you sleep, you lend your server to other players to access your server to process your game. So that's not new at all.
So Alex, we've heard some potential business applications for this technology. What are you most excited about?
Okay, that's actually what's always in our mind. We think the first one is finance. It's obviously Bitcoin has, in a certain way, changed the cross-border P2P payment. So I'll quote what Edison Horowitz quoted earlier, that he was saying software is eating the world, and I'm trying to say that blockchain is eating finance. So finance, in a certain way, will be challenged and be, if not revolutionized, by the blockchain in a whole. There are a lot of infrastructure came into the picture. Of course, there's the first one we lead is a custodian. That we see the BitGo or Coinbase that already came into play. And then we can see whatever on the Wall Street gonna have a mirror image on the crypto street. So that's number one industry. Number two is actually gaming. So we think gaming is the generation X. So the next generation, it's not only related to just gaming, but they spend a lot of time on their mobile ends, or this Twitter, or the chat, or this Douyin, all this very exciting new virtual entertainment will bring them into a new world. So over there, we're gonna have a new economy, which, if possible, can be governed by blockchain. That will bring a lot of new rules, a lot of a new economy into that area. So, for example, like if I know you play games, you have a gear. When you quit that game, that gear doesn't belong to you. It was actually kept and maintained by the gaming platform. However, if we have a blockchain implement, the gear might be able to carry it with you out of that game. So that's where I think blockchain will bring, we call a strong private property into a lot of a new industry like gaming. Yeah, so number two is gaming. The third one we'll think is education. So education in a way that we will bring a lot of classroom in the virtual world that bring whatever the instructor and the students easier to meet each other. The incentiveship out of the blockchain will help that to happen in a lot more efficient way. So we don't need to really some intermediate. We can try to bring the two together. So this is 3 areas we think will have some early application out of blockchain. Thank you.
I liked this phrase you used, blockchain is eating finance. There's a bit of a meme that goes around in the banking world, and it's blockchain, not Bitcoin. What do you think about this? Where do you stand on that view?
Yeah, actually, can I jump in on
sure.
that? I think, so Alex and I were very good friends, and the reason we were introduced by our mutual friends because we're both from Sichuan, we both study math. Of course, he's much, much more advanced than me. And when we both got into blockchain rabbit hole around the same time. And for me, when you ask about the price and the Bitcoin, for me, when I first attracted to Bitcoin, I didn't pay attention the first few years. And then I realized, when it's just like, a few $100s, it's not going away. And I thought, this might be interesting, investment to look into. And I was attracted by the price, but after I read Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper, I was blown away, and I realized that pricing is the least important thing for blockchain, for Bitcoin, because my previous job, I was head of strategy for Thomson Reuters. We serve all the banks and funds, and over the years, I helped the company to acquire a lot of fintech companies before the term fintech was invented, and all these companies, with no exception, they're all pretty much building on the same system and just incrementally improve some of the efficiency or transparency. But with Bitcoin, with completely decentralized approach, it really challenged everyone involved in financial industry to approach the whole financial system in a completely different way. Rightly or wrongly, I think no matter where the Bitcoin's price is going to be, I think Bitcoin will proven in this century the most important invention that's going to disrupt the entire financial industry.
I really like Jen's approach, the way she looked at this. But I think the impact is even further. The reason I'm excited about blockchain is that it really is transforming the world in the sense that how redesigning the role of corporation and redesigning how wealth is being distributed. If you look at the past 30 years, internet has become the driving force of wealth growth. But internet is a very monopolizing economy. There's no other industry that has such a big networking effect that is favoring the guy on the top. I even think the internet boom could be blamed as part of the reason for the populism politics. Because even though the global wealth is being driven up tremendously because of internet and digital economy, only a fraction of the population get richer. If you look at blockchain, it actually transformed the relationship between the consumers and the enterprise. Consumers are stakeholders in the beginning of the project. Secondly, I think it will challenge the current data ownership mechanism scheme of today, because I think data of the people should be by the people and for the people. I believe 10 years down the road, when we look back, we will see people's data, a person's data, the same way we're seeing her intellect and her labor. If you're making a profit based on the user's data, the user needs to be compensated. I think blockchain can lay the foundation for that. And it really has a much deeper and social impact to the entire world.
Your point about of the people, by the people, for the people is a perfect segue to open the floor up to questions in the audience. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask?
Adam.
About Adam. I somehow figured you might have something to say.
No, I found your last point to be fascinating, and it helps me understand why you and others are so enthusiastic about blockchain. Do you think that the big internet powers like Google and Facebook, Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu will fight blockchain because of the way you posited that they have everything to lose from blockchain? And if they fight, will they fight effectively?
So are these giants opposed to blockchain?
Well, it's, I think it's not fair to speak for them. And I really haven't discussed this with any of the leaders of those companies. But I do think blockchain is fascinating, opens up such a fascinating new realm of doing business. It will eventually revolutionize the internet companies, whether they're participants in this new world or they're resistors in this new world.
Can I add a, sorry, can I add a bit? So I know the gameplay in Silicon Valley was, you know, Google or Facebook. They were not particularly interested in blockchain. But however, Microsoft, as you mentioned, they are a big sponsor of many things behind because they missed the train of mobile internet. So they were actually very proactive. And there's another player recently came out of the picture is Amazon. So due to they have the cloud infrastructure everywhere, so they are trying to provide an enterprise to start to run a blockchain project just directly on their platform. However, it's a permissionable blockchain, so we call a private chain. I think private chain will have a certain, you know, use case, but the future will be really majorly in the public chain. The chain that are open to everyone, like Lei just mentioned, 1 million or 10 million users. That's where we're gonna see our through.
I actually think Lei brought up a very important question, you know, point, which is the point I feel very passionate about, which is data ownership. If you think about all the mess, you know, Facebook got themselves into with the Cambridge Analytica, it's centralized the data ownership. And the European EU's response is that, okay, let's regulate. But regulation, basically, you have to have a broad brush with no consideration of any nuance. However, privacy is a very nuanced issue. What's private to me compared to what's private to you is very different. So and also, if you think about ownership, the full ownership in the legal term, you really have to be able to hold it, sell it at the price you prefer, gift it, or destroy it. And that's a full ownership. So when the regulators say, okay, data ownership is supposed to be individual, then what? I can't do anything with that, right? So one thing, a lot of, quite a few startups we're supporting, they started looking into how to use blockchain to give them pricing power back to individual. And I think that's going to be multi-billion-dollar, business opportunity. Will Google and Facebook fight it? Of course. But if you pay attention to, I was alluding to this yesterday, pay attention to what Tim Cook's been saying, pay attention to what, some of the brightest tech leaders saying, I think the inflection point is already here in terms of how we're gonna manage this data ownership. And I think also, this conference is so much about AI, and one point we're not touching on is the UBI, universal basic income. How do we approach universal basic income is a very heated debate. I actually debate about UBI, against UBI in Oxford Union, not because I don't support that individual people, if they don't get a job, they shouldn't be helped, but because I don't think there will be a sensible economic model for government to produce UBI. However, if we give the pricing power to individual, and in the AI economy, where data is really the fuel of AI economy, then selling data is potential income or source for UBI.
I add a couple of color to this topic.
Please.
According to Pew, 91% of Americans believe that they have lost control of their data. And there was an article a few days ago written by Ash Carter, the former Secretary of Defense, and saying that technology need to be aligned with a public purpose. I think that's very true to our technologists. Without a real public purpose, I think there will be less enthusiasm, from me at least, to push the envelope. But together, with the same purpose, I think the industry will eventually grow and flourish.
I believe so.
I'm going to hijack the end of the Q&A because we just have a couple minutes left, and I want to return to your point that you made about regulators. What would you like to see regulators do differently? Are you satisfied with their approach?
I think regulators have a very difficult job to do because by nature, regulations are retrospective, right? Regulators have to be based on what already happened and figure out what to do. But in this space, we all know if you are in the crypto or blockchain space, a day feels like a year, right? Things happening so quickly. I'm sure you are the same, Robert. You're in the rabbit hole as well. I think, the government, the regulators really need to be able to understand the nature of the technology and the nature of players in the space a lot better, so they don't have a, broad brush and say, they have to select a business that actually have underlying, solid business, solid technology like Lei's company, and allow a few to really experiment, right? Because I don't think this is a go away. But on your point in terms of regulator, I actually think in China's case, I don't think this kind of limitation will be forever, because one of the most powerful, and I wrote about this, I wrote a quite long op-ed about this, one of the most powerful application is for PBOC to digitalize RMB and use on One Belt One Road, and that will replace some of the US dollar reserve, and it's going to be very disruptive.
We've got just half a minute left. Do either of you have recommendations for regulators you care to share?
Well, as a public infrastructure company, we embrace all the regulation will be applied to us. We really want to see more clear signals from the regulators.
I'd like regulations to be more proactive. There should be a framework of thought that everybody accepts and have some consensus on the framework. I think when we approach any policy issues, the debate of the framework is the first thing that needs to happen.
Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I think we should not let the price indicate the enthusiasm around this technology, it seems. So,
thank you.
Thank you.